An optimistic tone out of the White House in advance of U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Ottawa this week. High on the agenda for that meeting, trade. And for that, the Prime Minister is turning to an old team to face new challenges, sitting down recently with the multi-partisan group of leaders and former politicians originally formed to face Trump's war on NAFTA. Now the feds want help with a new trade hurdle, Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which offers big business subsidies, forcing fierce competition in North America. Let's bring in some of the members of the former NAFTA Advisory Council now. Former interim Conservative leader Rana Ambrose is here. She's the deputy chairwoman at TD Securities and the Calgary chair of the Council of Women CEOs. Former Assembly of First Nations National Chief Perry Bellegarde is here. He's now a special advisor at Fasken. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister James Moore is with us. He's now a senior business advisor at Dentons and former president of the Canadian Labour Congress. Turned Senator Hassan Yousaf is with us as well. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you tonight, and I appreciate you making the time on the eve of a pretty significant visit. I wanted to start off with you, Rana, and in particular kind of ask you about, in a relative sense, if you think back to the challenge Canada faced with NAFTA, how you would assess the challenge we face right now when it comes to trade with the U.S.
Well, I mean, I would assess the Inflation Reduction Act as one of the biggest challenges we will face over the next 12 years while the Inflation Reduction Act is in place. It has created a massive economic and tax advantage in the U.S. And just from my role at the investment bank at TD, we're seeing developers, investors, move and focus their capital allocation to the United States. If I'll just give you a really quick example of the effect of the Inflation Reduction Act. If you look at a carbon capture storage project that costs billions of dollars, a multi-year investment, here in Canada, we put in place some tax incentives that will help cover the cost up to about 35%. That same project south of the border will have capital costs covered up to 65%, including operational costs. And if you use American steel, you get a bigger tax break. If you use American workers and trade unions, you get a bigger tax break. I mean, this is the biggest industrial strategy, economic framework for the country that we've seen since the Second World War. It's massive, and it is going to create a huge sucking sound of capital to south of the border. So it's a major challenge, and we'll have to see what the Trudeau administration does in this next budget, but they have to meet it or beat it, or we're going to be at an economic disadvantage.
Perry, it's interesting because they've talked about that in the lead up to the budget. And what we've heard signaled is we kind of can't go toe for toe, but we will be selective in figuring out how to counter it. Yeah. If they are going to be selective, what should their priorities be from where you sit?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act is a huge thing the USA has come up with. And I think there's an opportunity for Canada next Tuesday through Chrystia Freeland in the budget, very targeted investments. I would hope that with President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau coming together here, that they also focus on one of the biggest issues facing not only the two countries, but the world, which is climate change. And they really got to start making strategic investments, in clean, green energy, no question, dealing with carbon capture and storage, dealing with carbon credits, carbon offsets, watch the greenwashing, and what I would hope that, because dealing with climate change, governments can't do that alone, dealing with that whole issue, net zero by 2050. Companies and CEOs can't do it alone. They have to be brought together and have these difficult conversations and start communicating, collaborating together. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I see. There's an opportunity for that. And also, more importantly as well, because of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, duty to consult and accommodate is there to develop all these natural resources in a sustainable way, but free, prior, and informed consent. So I always say, before you build anything, build a respectful partnership and relationship with Indigenous peoples as well going forward. And that applies not only in Canada, but also on the USA side.
If those are the priorities, for example, as the government, James, has indicated, investing in the green economy, has the U.S. and the IRA and the decisions that it kind of forces on us almost precipitated like what we end up coming with? Like, are they kind of forcing our hand in a way, and is that a bad or good thing?
Not at all. As Rana outlined, the the IRA in the United States is not actually an Inflation Reduction Act. It's an industrial policy for the next decade. And it's very ambitious and very aggressive. President Biden is somebody who people underestimate because of his presence, his demeanor, and sort of the calming nature he is relative to the bluster of President Trump. Donald Trump was a threat to the Canada-U.S. relationship because of his belligerence and rhetoric and his threat to abdicate NAFTA entirely. President Biden is much more, I think, strategic because the people around him recognize that there's an opportunity here for them to take advantage of the dynamics of both coming out of COVID and because of the inflation dynamics to really push an aggressive and robust policy. Canada is not competitive versus this. So Minister Freeland does have, I think, a big challenge in front of her. This visit that's going to happen in the last half of this week, I think is going to be very good in terms of photo ops, very good in terms of presence, not a lot of commitments. We might get some pressure on Haiti. We might get some pressure on Ukraine and military spending, but the government will be able to sort of push back from those expectations and say we've got a budget coming, and they'll buy themselves some time. But there is an existential dynamic here that Canada will not be competitive within North America if we don't get things right. And of course, we still have the timeline coming up for the renewal of the new NAFTA, the USMCA, and you see real troubling signs in Mexico and real threats to the NAFTA and the North American partnership if Mexico continues to go forward with anti-democratic measures that President Obrador is putting forward. So in the immediate term, we have threats. In the long term, we have economic competitive issues. And for the renewal of NAFTA, we have real challenges. So this relationship will look good in the pictures that you see in the next couple of days. But structurally, competitively, economically, Canada and America are at a fork in a road, and we're going in different directions.
Hassan, is there a way for the government to navigate that? And to use James' kind of analogies, in the short term in this meeting, what should they be trying to do?
Well, I think we should basically say we agree on the same things that the Americans are talking about. Clearly, we need to shift in the economy, and I think both countries have indicated they're moving in that direction. But at the same time, you can't do that without matching some of the efforts of the United States in terms of the subsidy they're providing. There is also a clear sense that the government are doing some of that. I think last week we saw an important announcement by Volkswagen in this country, and that was a hard work by Minister Champagne and other levels of government. But it's not just the federal government who have to do this on their own. They're working with the province to ensure, because the jobs and the investments are going to also happen in their jurisdiction. So the federal government and the province need to have the same hymn book as how we're working together to secure investment, but also to continue to use those investment to continue to generate jobs and to build a new economy, because we don't have a choice. There is going to be a new economy. It's already evolving in that direction. I think Canada and the United States can collaborate even closer. We've got the minerals. We've got an educated workforce. We've got, of course, a good healthcare system that clearly can use some more support from government in terms of how workers and others get access to that. But we're starting at a place where we have some great advantage. Those who want to invest in this country, but also at the same time, what other levers of government can be used to ensure we're going to get those investments. And I think the Volkswagen announcement last week shows that we've got the capacity to secure investment if we're able to lever provinces and federal government working together to ensure those companies know when they come here, they're going to get the welcome, of course, but equally they've got a workforce and they've got a system that's going to give them educated workforce to work with, but also a healthcare system. It's a great advantage for operating in Canada.
We don't yet know, though, Rana, exactly what both the Ontario government and the federal government had to do to secure that deal. Do you think that when we do find that out, we'll have an indication of the scope of the kind of response the Feds especially are prepared to provide to counter the IRA?
Yeah, I mean, they were competing against the U.S. for that Volkswagen plant. And so they know exactly what it's going to take to beat that competition. And that's what we need wholesale across the country in multi-sectors to match the IRA. And we don't have that right now. So it's a big lift. It's going to be expensive. But in the North American context, we are a small economy. And Biden has set up a program that is, made in America, build in America, bring back American jobs. I mean, if Trump wanted to make America great again, Biden is trying to make the U.S. Blue collar again. He is trying to create factories, jobs, onshore, reshore. I mean, like James said, it's really interesting because he doesn't come across as sort of that threatening. He's our best friend next door, but he is very protectionist. The agenda he has, his economic agenda, is a threat to the Canadian economy. And so, yeah, we have to meet it or beat it. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. The template is there. We know how to do it. It's just going, it's going to be expensive. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take the work of the provinces, to Hassan's point. This has to be a made in Canada across the board solution, because that's what's happening in the U.S. now.
I'm running out of time. I want to make sure I get everyone in one last comment. Perry, is it your sense as the federal government heads into these meetings that they are eyes wide open to what Rana just laid out?
No, I'd agree with all the statements made by my colleagues around the table. We have a good example with Volkswagen coming to Canada. Like, keep building on that. Bring together the provincial governments, First Nations governments, and the federal government working together, and the private sector. Everybody has to be brought together. This is a all hands on deck approach, for people living in Canada, so we can work with, cooperate, take on our friends and colleagues, the USA, and let's keep working collectively together on that.
James, because this is the advisory council, if the federal government says, "What's your advice heading into these meetings in the next 2 days?" What would you tell them? What have you told them?
Keep your friends close and the Americans closer. I guess is the short answer to it. And look, there clearly is a good working relationship, and you see amongst the four of us, and included across the NAFTA Council. We had a meeting last week, and I think there are three things: national security, national unity, and I think economic security are fundamental things where people should work cross-party, cross-boundaries for the best interest of all Canadians. Let's not forget, about 1 in 4 Canadian jobs is dependent on trade with the United States, and we have to keep these supply chains open, this opportunity open for Canadians. And we can't just be treated like the Americans, I think many of them want to do, which is sort of treat Canada as an export market only to dump some products into a little bit, but not really build those functional supply chains. And it's a real threat and a really important relationship for Canada to get right in terms of the fundamentals of our policy mix.
Hassan, last word to you, your advice to the government.
Well, federalism works, by the way, when we work with each other. And we've seen the success of that in Ontario. We've seen the success of that in Newfoundland, very recently in Labrador, where the German government comes, says they want to invest in our country, and they want to invest in a place that we didn't think they would do that. They've done that. It shows that federalism can work when we work together. And I think our advice will be to the federal government, hey, we got to find the resources, obviously, because this budget is critical. But equally, the province got to step up and say we're going to do our part to work with the federal government to ensure when we're competing for this investment, we don't have the time to bicker and criticize each other. We need to roll up our sleeves and work with each other as Canadians, because the greater good of this country is what this is about. We can secure the job, but we can also secure the brighter future if we invest in the future of Canada.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. That's a good note to leave it on, actually. Thank you very much, all four of you, for making the time. Rana Ambrose, Perry Bellegarde, James Moore, and Hassan Youssef.